I never expected my first day to turn into a tear-jerking showdown. But fate had other plans. I will never forget the cacophony of the bustling high school hallway, lockers slamming, laughter echoing, and the smell of cheap cologne thick in the air. My heart raced as I clutched my books, breath hitching like a runaway train. Everything had changed. I was the new girl, and anxiety wrapped around me. Squeezing tight as I stepped through the front doors. The sun was radiant, but shadows lingered beneath the bright smiles of my peers. I scanned the crowd, searching for warmth in the sea of strangers. My best friend, Lily, was supposed to be my anchor today. She had promised to guide me through the chaos. But she was absent, caught up in her own whirlwind, lost in the bright colors of drama club rehearsals. The bell rang, slicing through the noise. I knew my first-class English lit was upstairs. I stumbled up the stairs, the vibrations of heavy footsteps behind me. I turned and locked eyes with the boy who had been staring. His piercing blue gaze made my chest tighten. A wicked grin split his face as he leaned in toward a group of friends, whispering, making me feel like a joke. And just like that, I was drowning. With each step, I felt smaller, as if the walls were closing in on me. I took a deep breath, inhaling the faint scent of marker and old paper, trying to ground myself. My fingers trembled as I clutched my books tighter, but the whispers behind me grew louder. Who does she think she is? Newbies don't last long here. Their laughter prickled my skin. Finally, I reached my classroom, only to find a sea of eyes staring back. The teacher, a hawk-eyed woman named Mrs. Hargrove, began her lesson. I felt invisible, an outsider clinging to the corners, while everyone else formed tight-knit circles. But just when I thought it couldn't get worse, chaos erupted. A loud crash shattered the moment. With the eye turned in shock, my heart thudding. A group of students was arguing by the window, fists clenched. His words cut through the air, raw and loud. You think this is a joke? You think him a fool? And just like that, it tipped. One punch, and everything exploded. Gasps. Screams. My heart raced. I darted to the side, adrenaline pumping, my mind screaming for escape. The chaos swirled around me, a blur of fists and flying books, gasps and cries, tension thick enough to cut. In that moment, a boy I had never seen before jumped in, breaking up the fight, his body moving like a streak of light. Strong. Determined. The atmosphere shifted, eyes darting between the fighters and this unexpected hero. My breath caught. Who was he? All eyes turned to him. The silence lay pregnant, a heartbeat echoing in the sudden stillness, a tension so palpable it seemed to vibrate through the air. But before anyone could say a word, the girl who had been fighting stepped back, tears streaming down her cheeks. You don't understand, she whispered, crumbling before us. I felt a pang of empathy, confusion swirling in my gut. I wanted to reach out, to pull her from her despair. But what did I really know about this place? About these people? The whirlwind of emotions left me breathless. I would never forget this moment. Or the boy who stood up. Was he a savior, or just another tragedy about to unfold? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The classroom buzzed with an unsettling energy, the recent brawl still hovering like a ghost among us. My heart raced, not from fear, but from the sudden realness of the emotions on display. I could feel a fragile line connecting us all, each laugh, each tear, each whispered secret binding us in ways I could hardly grasp. As the students settled back into their seats, faces still flushed from the confrontation, I could see that the girl who had crumbled was now sitting in the back corner, her shoulders shaking silently. I felt an inexplicable urge to go to her, to prove I wasn't just another spectator in her turmoil. But what could I say? I was as lost as she was, a ship tossed in unfamiliar waters. Mrs. Hargrove cleared her throat, attempting to draw focus back to her lesson, but the words were far away, muffled by my swirling thoughts. I caught a glimpse of the boy who had intervened earlier, his brow furrowed in concern as he stole glances at the girl, now visibly trembling, her pain echoing in the air like the remnants of the fight. A sudden memory flickered me, first dance recital in middle school. I had tripped and fallen flat on my face, the laughter of my classmates shattering my spirit. I remembered clenching my fists, choking back tears, while the spotlight felt like a prison. I knew this girl, she too, was at the mercy of a world that seemed poised to laugh, to judge. The bell rang, jolting me out of my reverie. I gathered my books, heart still hammering in my chest, and took a breath. Maybe I could reach out to her. As I moved toward the door, the boy, the hero, moved alongside me. "Hey," he murmured, his voice soft but steady. "I'm Noah." I blinked, surprised. Head want to speak to me. "I'm Mia." "Mia," he repeated, as if tasting the word. "Some first day, right?" "Yeah," I responded, fully aware of the weight of his gaze. "Do you know her?" I nodded toward the girl, who was now dabbing at her eyes with a crumpled tissue. Noah exhaled slowly, his expression shifting. "Her name is Jenna. She's going through a lot." His words were cryptic, but something in his tone urged me to press further. "Is she okay?" He shrugged, but there was a heaviness in his posture. "I don't know. I just know that we're all struggling in different ways. You can't see someone break and not feel it here." He placed a hand on his chest, and for an instant, our hearts beat as one, connected in this fragile moment. I wanted to say something profound, something that would instill hope. But what did I know about heartbreak or struggle? Then, without thinking, I blurted, "Let's go say hi." Noah blinked at me in surprise, but there was a flicker of understanding in his eyes. Together, we walked over to the corner of the room where Jenna sat alone, her tear-streaked face buried in her hands. "Hey," I said gently, pulling the words out slowly, desperately wanting to ease her pain. "I'm Mia, and this is Noah." She looked up, her eyes red and puffy. I can't. I messed everything up," she sobbed, the confession hanging heavy in the air. And oh, Noah said, stepping closer, his voice firm yet tender. "You didn't mess up. What happened in there? It just felt like everything boiled over." "That doesn't define you." I had no idea what to do or say, but I felt a pull to be there, to help her not feel so alone in her struggle. "You're not alone in this. We're here," I added, placing a small hand on her back as if my touch could shield her from the weight of judgment. Instead of responding, Jenna let out a slow breath, the tension in her shoulders easing just a notch, and that flicker of hope I had craved finally illuminated her face. But then, the classroom door burst open, and in walked the principal, his face stormy. "We need to talk about what just happened," he boomed, voice echoing through the room like a clap of thunder, cutting through our moment like glass shattering on the floor. My stomach dropped. The tension returned, thicker than before. Jenna shrank back, fear creeping across her features as chaos erupted once more, their broken trust, their shared vulnerabilities suddenly crumbling beneath the weight of authority. And I realized with a twinge of despair that the first day of school was just the beginning of this tumultuous journey, and the day would demand more than I had anticipated. What had seemed like a moment of connection was slipping through my fingers like grains of sand, each passing second a reminder of the fragility of hope. In that instant, amidst the confusion, I caught sight of a note fluttering to the ground near Jenna's desk, probably dropped in the chaos. My heart raced at the sight of familiar handwriting, the looping letters unmistakable. What secrets, what new challenges did this note hold? I hesitated, my heart pounding, caught between the urge to uncover its contents and the fear of unleashing another storm. The classroom, once charged with agonizing regret, now felt like an errant, uncertain battlefield where emotions roared louder than the principal's reprimand. I remained rooted in place, my thoughts racing like frightened birds. The note lay there, abandoned, a silent witness to the unraveling. In that chaotic moment, I made a choice. Almost instinctively, I bent down and picked it up, the crinkled paper feeling alive in my palm. I dared a glance at Jenna, who was watching me with a mix of hope and fear, her expression tied to the potential of what this small piece of paper might mean. "Just hold on," I whispered, clutching the note tightly as a shield against the encroaching tempest of authority. Noah's presence beside me grounded me, his warm gaze steadying my frazzled nerves. As the principal continued his lecture about the importance of maintaining decorum and respect, I carefully unfolded the note. "Jenna, I can't do this anymore. Everyone thinks you're the problem, but they don't understand. I can't stand by while you take the blame for my mistakes. I'm not sorry for standing up for you, but I need you to know I was wrong too." My heart quickened at the words, the pain and confusion bleeding through the ink. The note was a lifeline, message of solidarity written in desperation, reflecting a tumultuous friendship that had apparently teetered on the edge of chaos. The principal's voice faded as a new narrative formed in my mind. Jenna's struggles were compounded not only by her own pain, but also by the intricate web of relationships around her. The hallways had witnessed more than just one fight. They were filled with whispers, betrayals, and perhaps long-lost friendships yearning to be reclaimed. I turned my gaze back to Jenna, whose eyes widened in recognition as I read silently. I wanted to share the revelation, to urge her to see the flicker of camaraderie in the depths of despair, but there were so many layers of fear and misunderstanding crisscrossing through her heart. "Jenna," I said softly, locking my eyes onto hers, grounding her amidst the chaos. "Look, this note, it means you're not alone. There are people who care, people who are willing to fight for you." The principal's voice grew fainter, but his presence loomed large, like shadows creeping ever closer. "Jenna can't always be the target, understand?" A murmur of agreement spread through the room, a collective weight that threatened to bury her spirit deeper. And then, a spark ignited in Jenna's eyes, something shifting as she saw the potential for understanding behind her pain. Tears fell like rain as a fragile smile broke through the storm. I felt a radiant force, small but glowing brightly, and it ignited something within me, a flicker of purpose that was exponentially stronger than the fear encircling us. But just as quickly, it dimmed. The principal had reached his final note, something I couldn't quite hear over the rush of emotion swelling in my ears. "This cannot continue. It'll be suspending certain individuals for disrupting this environment. We need to set a precedent." Panic surged as Jenna flinched, her shoulders collapsing inward once more. I could feel my heart sink. What kind of precedent was being set during our first day? A precedent of isolation, of scapegoating, of fear? I couldn't let that happen. No. I found myself shouting, the sharpness in my voice startling everyone, including myself. "This isn't just her fault. You can't just act like this is a simple case of right and wrong." The classroom turned silent, eyes flickering to me with sheer disbelief. Even Noah looked at me like I had sprung wings. But there was something deeper feeding my voice. I wouldn't let Jenna's quiet suffering be dismissed so easily. I felt the floor beneath me tremble, the overwhelming emotion threatening to spill over and break the dam I'd built around my own heart. The principal's eyebrows shot up, irritation morphing into surprise. "Excuse me, Mia?" I took a deep breath in, the world around me fading once more as I plunged deeper into my own thoughts. "I mean, we are all struggling here. There's no clarity and blame when everyone is broken inside. Sometimes we need to lift one another up instead of tearing each other down. The moment stretched, heavy with tension. Then, like the first rays of dawn piercing through a dark night, the unexpected happened. A voice from the back of the room rang out, fragile yet resolute. "She's right, you know." The class turned around, and out of shadows, a boy stood, his arms crossed defiantly. "We're all in this together." More voices joined in, and finally, amidst the collective ripple of camaraderie, a genuine solidarity began to bloom. Laughter and support welled up through hatred and dismay, and I could see a new resolve knitting our hearts together. Jetta's gaze met mine, and I saw the threads of hope weaving into a tapestry of resilience. But the sweetness was short-lived. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a loud bang echoed through the hall, cutting through our moment like a cold knife. The principal's words faltered, apprehension sweeping through the room. Real danger was lurking just outside our walls. An emergency, an uninvited disruption, sent waves of fear rippling among us. The last thing I caught was the look on Jenna's face, decoding the darkness she had invited into her world. And within that split second, before the panic erupted into chaos again, I realized that our battle was just beginning. Our emotional journey had a long road ahead, and there was more to unravel than I had ever anticipated. What lay on the other side of that door, I couldn't fathom. But I knew whatever it was, it would change everything. The echoes of chaos pulsated through the classroom, a symphony of fear and confusion as we all stood frozen, the oppressive weight of uncertainty thickening the air. The loud bang that had interrupted our fragile moment of unity felt like a dark thunderstorm rolling in, obscuring the hope we had just begun to embrace. My heart raced, pounding against my ribcage like a wild animal trying to escape its cage. Around me, the faces of my classmates flared with panic, and Jenna's expression was a fragile blend of dread and uncertainty. I instinctively reached for her hand, intertwining my fingers with hers, a desperate attempt to anchor her in the storm. The warmth of her skin contrasted sharply with the cold grip of fear tightening around us. "Jenna, it's okay, we'll get through this," I whispered, my voice barely above a tremor. The principal's face shifted to a mask of authority, attempting to regain control over the overwhelming tide of anxiety threatening to swallow us whole. Everyone remained calm. "Stay in your seats," he demanded, but the tremor in his voice betrayed the unease spiraling through him. Outside, the shouts of authority and the clamor of hurried footsteps grew louder. I could hear someone yelling, a frantic urgency that made my stomach twist. This wasn't just a drill. Something serious was unfolding, a truth lurking just beyond the threshold that felt malevolent. I couldn't help but wonder what lay out there, waiting to crash down on us. As my senses heightened, the palpable fear transformed into a bittersweet determination. Amidst the turmoil, I felt a flicker of defiance rising within minute, just for Jenna, but for everyone trapped in this cycle of misunderstanding and pain. Maybe we could turn this chaos into something meaningful. But how? "Please," I turned to the others, a subtle plea threading through my voice. "If we all stand together, we can't just be quiet, Mia." A voice called out from the back, punctuating my sentence with harshness. It was Lisa, one of Jenna's tormentors, her eyes narrowed and her stance rigid. "You don't get it. Just sit down and let it be." But that was the problem, wasn't it? I had spent too long letting things be, sweeping hurt under the rug while pretending it didn't exist. I couldn't do that anymore, not when lives could hang in the balance, not when our voices were powerful enough to create change. The urge to dismiss Lisa's comments was almost instinctive, but instead, I found a sliver of empathy emerging within me. "What are you so scared of, Lisa?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady though a storm brewed behind my ribs. "We all want to feel safe here, but this is bigger than us. We need to support each other, not tear each other down." Silence fell again, heavy and unyielding. The weight of our collective fear transformed subtly, the flickers of courage sparking back to life. Jenna's grip tightened around my hand, and through the wild brush of emotions, I could see a question reflected in her tear-filled eyes. Did I have the strength to change our fate? Before any answer could surface, the classroom door burst open, the ominous shadows from the hallway swallowing up the light. An officer stood there, stark against the chaos, his uniform crisp, but his gaze heavy with concern. "Everyone, listen carefully," he commanded, his voice cutting through the mounting tension. "We need you to stay calm. There's been an incident outside. We're going to secure the building, but for your safety, I need you to stay in your classrooms. No one is to leave until we give the all-clear." Panic surged again, louder than before, igniting half-whispered questions and half-formed thoughts. "What happened? Is everyone okay?" a student murmured, his voice barely suppressing a tremor. The fear mirrored in Jenna's eyes reflected a deep-rooted anxiety, one that had been nurtured by years of feeling like a target. The echoes of my classmates' confusion blurred into a haze as I locked eyes with Jenna, and for a brief moment, we stood together on the precipice of Chanhaya's silent acknowledgement that this shared moment of fear could be a catalyst for unity. "Mia?" she whispered, uncertainty lacing her voice. What if they don't come for us?" Each word wrapped around me like an anchor, as I struggled with the swirling tide of thoughts in my mind. I didn't want to think about the possibility of leaving Jenna behind. And yet, hadn't we both been left behind before? But I also knew the strength that comes from shared vulnerability, how in that very rawness lay the potential for connection. "Then we fight through this together," I vowed, searching for the courage hidden beneath my own uncertainty. "We're stronger united. We have to believe that." But before I could delve deeper into our fragile promise, another thundering sound resonated from the hallway, a jarring reminder that the chaos was spilling beyond the walls we stood protected within. Breathy gasps rippled through the room, a collective holding of breath, as we stood on the edge of an unknown precipice, terrified yet determined. And then came the unexpected, the faint ringing of the school's fire alarm blaring through the air, slicing through the tense atmosphere with an urgency that set everyone into a new state of panic. My heart jumped, each beat echoing the uncertainty lurking within me. Did fate truly have other plans for us today? With the flicker of hope still alight in my heart and fear churning in my gut, I could only wonder what awaited us beyond the classroom doors, and would we emerge unscathed? In the moment that the fire alarm blared, the world outside the classroom faded away, leaving behind only the chaotic melody of our shared panic. I could feel Jenna's hand tighten around mine, her grip a lifeline against the rising tide of uncertainty. The piercing shriek of the alarm seemed to blur the lines of fear already drawn within us, escalating the stakes to an unbearable pitch. "Mia, what do we do?" Jenna's voice trembled, and for the first time, I could see the chinks in her armor, her facade of resilience slipping just enough for the vulnerability beneath to shine through. In the midst of the chaos, I felt myself standing at a crossroads, not just for us, but for everyone in that room. "We stay calm. We need to listen to the officers. They'll know what to do," I replied, my voice surprising even me with its steadiness. But the shouts from outside grew louder, the urgency in the officers' voices ringing with desperation. I could almost feel the wild pulse of their footsteps reverberating in my chest. Fear took on a tangible form, creeping its way through the cracks of our hope. Suddenly, the door swung open again, revealing a woman in a navy blue uniform, her expression one of fierce determination as she strode into the room. "Everyone, we're evacuating. I need you to line up, stay together, and follow me." At her command, the classroom erupted into a flurry of motion, desks scraping against the floor as students scrambled to their feet. I knew Jenna needed me, but the instinct to flee pounded within me like an inexorable drumbeat. I hesitated for just a heartbeat, searching for her amidst the chaos that threatened to span the gaps we'd worked so hard to bridge. "Come on, Jenna. We can do this together," I encouraged, easing my way through the throngs of students. The heat of bodies pressed against me, a cacophony of confusion swirling in the air. Just as we began to move, I felt a hand dig into my shoulder. Lisa's grip was fierce and unyielding. "We can't just go out there. What if it's worse?" She shot a glance over her shoulder, her voice heavy with uncertainty and fear. I could see that behind her defiance lay a child terrified of the storm raging outside her control. "Better to be outside than stuck here wondering," I replied gently, hoping that my determination might thaw the ice encasing her fear. "We have to trust that they'll guide us." Jenna squeezed my hand, her eyes wide, and I could feel our hearts beating in sync, each thud echoing a shared promise of courage. Together, we moved toward the exit, a fragile unit in the sea of chaos. As we filed out of the classroom, the blaring alarm echoed through the hallways like a beast awakened, pulling us into the unknown. I could see the glimmers of lights in the distance, but they felt like stars slipping just beyond my grasp. Students around us whispered and cried, their anxiety a palpable force in the air, but amidst the fear, there were moments of unexpected kindness. Someone helping a younger student who had stumbled, a hand reaching back to pull another forward. Outside, the chaos intensified, yet beneath the surface of panic was something else, a spirit of resilience that began weaving itself through our collective fear. For every streak of anger or despair, someone else offered comfort, creating an unspoken tapestry of solidarity. I grasped for Jenna's hand more tightly as we pushed our way outside, a soft smile breaking through the storm hovering over her features, even if just for a moment. Yet, as we emerged into the blinding light of day, reality crashed back around us like a tidal wave. The scene was far from safe. The parking lot was filled with emergency vehicles, some buzzing with activity, while others stood ominously still. The air was thick with tension, and everywhere I looked, I could see fear etched on faces both familiar and new. "Mia, look!" Jenna gasped, her finger pointing toward a cluster of students gathered just off to the side, murmuring urgently. As we moved closer, dread pulled in my stomach when I recognized the figure in the center. The principal, his expression stricken, flanked by officers speaking in hushed, urgent tones. "What happened?" I thought I heard someone whisper, but before I could gather my thoughts, a heavy-set officer motioned for us to gather closer. "Listen up," he called, his voice carrying an authority that cut through the air. "There's been a serious situation. We're implementing lockdown protocols. For your safety, I need everyone to stay close. No one is to move beyond this area." A chill skated down my spine as the gravity of his words sunk in. A situation? What did that mean? In an instant, I felt the anchor of fear ground me, like a stone dropped into still waters, creating ripples that shocked through my very being. What if the chaos wasn't just surrounding us, but also lurking in the shadows of our lives? "Mia, I'm scared," Jenna murmured, her eyes darting around as anxiety snaked its way back into her voice. I opened my mouth to reassure her, to tell her that we would find a way through this, but before the words could escape, a loud crack echoed from somewhere in the distance, a noise too sharp, too out of place. A collective gasp swept through us, my heart racing as I turned my eyes back to Jenna. Her face had gone pale, an ashen hue washing over her features. Fear had begun etching deeper lines into her brow, and I couldn't shake the sense of foreboding rising through the air like smoke. The tension, the uncertainty, it was all circling back upon us. "Something's wrong," I whispered, my heart pounding as the realization settled heavily over us. The situation was far from resolved. We were merely sitting at the beginning of a storm, the true nature of which was yet to be revealed. As I searched the chaos for an answer and action, a reason my chest tightened. We were standing in the eye of danger, and what lay ahead was a truth waiting to unfurl with catastrophic consequences. The air crackled with tension, a tangible thing that bound us tightly together in our vulnerability. I stole a glance at Jenna, whose wide eyes reflected the shared fear pulsing through each of us. Her breath hitched in her throat, and I regretted not being able to find the right words to soothe her. The officer's voice broke through my thoughts. Stay calm. We will have more information shortly. But the urgency of his tone told me this was far from a minor event. I scanned the crowd, looking for familiar faces, friends who could anchor me, voices that might bring comfort amid the swirling uncertainties. I spotted Kyle, standing close to a group of boys known for their bravado, yet even his laughter was absent today, replaced by an anxious fidgeting. They were all menacing with bravado, but the wildness in their eyes betrayed how fragile that confidence was. Nearby, Lisa stood with her friends, her features sharp in angst. Gone was her confidence in resisting the evacuation, replaced by the unmistakable weight of panic that hung in the air. I wanted to reach out to her, to bridge the divide of fear, but I was reminded of the isolation I felt when I first moved here. Mia, what do we do? Jenna's voice cracked again, drawing my focus back to her. We wait, and we follow their instructions, I assured her, though my own heart leaned toward despair. The uncertainty of what came next felt heavier than I had anticipated. Shadows seemed to deepen around us, leaving us shivering against the warmth of the sun. It wasn't long before a low growl of discord rose from the other side of the gathering, where whispers began transforming into panicked shouts. What if it's our school they're after? The words cut through the cries around us like knife through flesh, leaving an icy trail of fear along my spine. Those words hung heavily in the air, pregnant with dread that felt all too real. Me? A voice pierced through the din. I turned to find Kyle striding toward us, his expression serious, eyes darting between Jenna and me. Did you hear that? Something isn't right. Where's everyone else? I asked, stealing a glance at the tumult and realizing several friends had pulled away, teetering on the edge of the crowd. They're scattering. Some say they should leave before it gets worse, he said, eyes still scanning the perimeter of chaos. There was an urgency in his gait, a frantic energy that rattled against my own heartbeat. Yet, as he stepped closer, I could see a spark in his demeanor, a flicker of bravery that I clutched onto desperately. Not all of us should leave, Caleb interjected from behind, joining our anxious huddle. What if that's what they want? We can't let fear push us apart. A murmur of doubt peppered the crowd, but there was something in Caleb's tone that sparked hope. It was a pulse of unity that transcended our ingrained terror. Together, we were stronger, wasn't that what we had always been told? We choose to stick together, I said, glancing back and forth between my friends. Please, can we just stay close? No matter what happens, Mia, look. Jenna's voice trembled again, pointing to where a small group of officers had begun to rally students, forming a makeshift barrier. They're saying something. A ripple of confusion danced across the gathering, excitement crackling in the air as people drew closer. Jenna remained glued to my side, her other hand squeezing Kyle's arm like a lifeline. I edged us closer, but felt a sudden pull back as the jostling crowd surged. Someone stepped on my foot, and I stumbled, releasing Jenna for just a moment, before she reached for me again. The atmosphere shifted as I caught a glimpse of the officer in front, a stern-faced woman whose voice resonated with strength beyond the chaos. We need everyone to listen. There's been a security breach. For the safety of your classmates, we need you all to stay right here. As each word pierced through the fog of fear surrounding us, an unexpected flicker of outrage ignited in my chest. A breach? I couldn't help but wonder what that truly meant. Who or what could threaten the sanctuary that we had created in those halls? Does that mean we're safe or not? I whispered to Jenna, who looked as pale as the clouds gathering ominously above us. What if someone's hurt? She asked, her breath shallow, the tides of her worry washing over me. Before I could think of an answer, a sudden realization struck me. What if they were already inside? The sudden rush of thoughts consumed me, a shameful cocktail of dread mixed with bewilderment. And then, before I could catch my breath, I glimpsed a shadow slipping away from the perimeter of the gathering, cloaked in a hoodie too dark against the sun. Could it be? Was someone really unspooled in this chaos? I turned to Kyle, breathing heavily and squeezing his shoulder as panic threatened to rise. "Do you see that?" He nodded, fear evident in his gaze. "We need to warn someone." But before I could react, the sound of shattering glass shattered the air around us. The moment hung suspended, an eternity crushed into a fraction of a second, as every student turned, fear coiling like a living entity amongst us. A cold realization took hold. This wasn't just a fire drill. It was the beginning of something far worse, and my heart raced with dread at the path unfolding before us. "Stay close," I urged, and as the words left my lips, the ground beneath us began to shift, life fracturing in front of our eyes. We were crossing into unknown territory, and I couldn't shake the feeling that the fabric of our reality was slipping like sand through our fingers. The chaos erupted around us, each shocked face reflecting an emotional landscape of uncertainty and fear. As the sound of shattering glass echoed into the air, the crowd's panic cascaded like a wave, pushing us backward, separating us from friends who were once our anchors. My breaths came out in sharp, ragged bursts, each one heavy with the weight of potential harm. "Where do we go?" Jetta's voice trembled, clutching my arm tighter as she squared herself against the tide of students retreating in confusion. The thought of losing her amidst this chaos struck a deeper chord of dread within me. Just follow me. Stick together." I shouted more for my own reassurance than for anyone else's. My heart raced, but in that crowded moment, a flicker of determination swept through me, igniting a need to be proactive, a stark contrast to the fear encroaching on every side. "Over there." Kyle pointed towards an opening between the throng. "The stairs. We can get to higher ground." His voice cut through the rising babble, and in those few words, a sliver of hope anchored itself in a chaotic sea. We moved, struggling against the surge, but every step forward felt like wading through thick mud as fear and desperation clung to us. I glared at the glancing fears playing on the faces surrounding us, lost, frightened, like marionettes with their strings cut. As we neared the staircase, someone collided into me from behind, momentarily dislodging us further. I turned to see a boy with wild, frantic eyes, pressing through fear with an urgency that echoed my own. "Why is no one doing anything?" he shouted, panic rippling through him. "Doesn't anyone care?" My heart ached, his question resonating vividly within me. Did we really care? In that moment, I understood his helpless rage. How could we stand idly by while anxious whispers morphed into outright terror? "I care," I shouted back, voicing the commingling fears and hopes, plugging my heart into his. "We all care. That's why we have to stick together. We'll find a way through this." Determined faces turned toward me, and while my cheeks burned with emotion, I clung to the possibility of stirring bravery in the hearts around us. But that bravado was abruptly tempered when we stumbled onto the staircase, where the officer had gathered a small group of students, urging them to follow her orders to remain calm. "Officer," I called, desperation clawing at my throat. "What are we supposed to do? We can't just stand here." Her eyes met mine, a mix of authority and fatigue etched in her features. "We need to ensure everyone is accounted for. Please stay together. Help us lead each other to safety." But in that moment, I realized the ragged pieces of our groups, those fragments of friends, struggled catastrophically. Each breath felt like it could be our last, and anxiety swirled like tempestuous clouds overhead. The thought of being apart, of no longer being able to reach out for Jenna, Kyle, or Caleb stretched to a breaking point. "No!" Panic clawed at me, but I took in a deep breath, summoning every ounce of courage. "Listen!" I called out, channeling not just my fears, but the collective anxiety bubbling within all of us. "We're stronger together. Let's find a way to help each other." The officer nodded, suddenly rejuvenated by my fervor. "Okay. Everyone pair up. Let's get everyone to safety." As we began to form rings of unity, a palpable sense of power began to rise among our group. There was Kyle beside me, and Jenna at my other side, a courageous fortress of friendship amidst the chaos. Caleb rallied more students, pulling together their energies in fruitless attempts to contain the panic that brewed when bubbles of fear burst into uncontrollable sobs. But just as we were regaining a semblance of composure, a piercing scream shattered the ambient noise. It was a girl, a dark-haired sophomore, whose face twisted grotesquely with terror. She pointed towards the other end of the hall, where shadows merged and shifted with unsettling intent. "There's someone there. We need to run," she shouted, and I felt my heart flip violently in response. "Stay calm," the officer barked, but the panic swelled like wildfire now. Faces were painted with dread and uncertainty, and chaos erupted all over again, drowning the cries of calm in an ocean of despair as the reality of our isolation set in. "Jenna." I grabbed her hand, unwilling to let go, while Kyle pressed closer, eyes darting to every shadow that flickered amidst the chaos. And that's when I saw it, the figure cloaked in darkness slipping away from the scene, shadows trailing like wraiths behind it. "Hold on tight," I whispered fiercely, urging Jenna and Kyle to stick even closer. Suddenly, we felt a jolt. The stairwell vibrated, and the lights flickered briefly above us as if the universe itself strained against the tension swirling around us. It felt like the walls were closing in, and my throat tightened with the weight of the looming unknown. "He's coming!" the girl yelled again. With renewed fervor, I turned instinctively toward my friends. "No!" I shouted, desperation clawing up my throat. "We can't lose each other now." But as the cries of fear rose beyond the threshold of coherence, an exhilarating, bone-chilling outlet swelled within mesomething primal, urging us to escape the waves of uncertainty and dread. Collective voices melded together in confusion, forming a cacophony thicker and heavier than the shadows creeping toward us. Then the lights flickered again, and that distant figure struck me with a sense of wicked familiarity, a sensation that clawed at the very depths of my darkest fears. I felt an overwhelming urge to cry out, but stopped short, heart pounding in my ears. Just as it all swirled to a maddening crescendo, a loud bang reverberated through the building, echoing against the steep walls of our sanctuary, and the world shattered. The tremor of the building faded away, yet the grim silence that enveloped us felt even more suffocating. In that brutal moment, surrounded by the faces of my friends and strangers alike, a chilling realization struck harder than the sounds of chaos that had just erupted. That figure, whoever or whatever it was more than a specter lurking in the shadows. It was an embodiment of our greatest fears, a manifestation of everything we dreaded becoming in the face of terror. Jenna squeezed my hand, her grip tighter than ever, as if our connection alone could stave off the uncertainty that loomed. "What do we do now?" she whispered, and I could hear the tremor in her voice that mirrored my own racing heart. "Just stick together." "We can't let them pull us apart," I said, though my own resolve wavered under the weight of impending panic. Kyle was scanning the stairwell, eyes darting like a hawk hunting for a threat. "Listen," Caleb shouted, rallying a small cluster of terrified faces. "If we're going to get out of here, we need to find the nearest exit." The officer mentioned that earlier. But amid Caleb's attempts to provide constructive direction, I could see the shadows lengthening not just behind us, but also within the confines of our hearts. For every ounce of hope he tried to instill, another wave of despair washed over us. It felt as if the air had grown heavier, and every breath pulled us deeper into an abyss. Caleb jutted his chin towards the flickering emergency lights, their wash of red flickering like frantic warning signals. "To the main exit? Follow me." Just as he turned, the crash echoed again, this time louder, sending reverberations through our bones. It felt like a heartbeat, a warning taunting us with a reminder that danger was rising. In my peripheral vision, I noticed the girl, the dark-haired sophomore. Her panic had crystallized into something more perilous. "They're coming for us!" she shrieked, the undertone of hysteria layering over her voice like a chilling cloak. Focus! Caleb yelled, assertively embodying what I wished I could feel. We need everyone to move, now. But our feet felt like lead, the path ahead filled with nebulous threats and lingering shadows. Every fiber of my being screamed to escape, yet fear completely overthrew logic. Don't look back, I urged my friends, forcing my seatbelt of courage across our collective hearts. Suddenly, a sliver of humanity broke through the chaos. An unexpected figure emerged from the crowd, a taller girl, her expression fierce yet steady. She caught my eye and gestured toward a side door that I hadn't even noticed. This way, she shouted, her voice cutting through the tumult of anxiety swirling around us like a beacon of light in darkness. Come on, before it's too late. Though fear still lay heavily upon us, I felt a decade's worth of stress lift momentarily. I led Jenna and Kyle toward the girl, hopeful that perhaps we had found a way through the madness. But as we neared her, a wretched cry erupted nearby, one that sent another bolt of ice straight through me. The girl faltered, glancing behind her with wide eyes filled with the kind of terror that twists your soul inside out. What was that? A flash of movement in the shadows caught my eye, too swift to be just a trick of the light, too deliberate to be random. It was the cloaked figure again, dancing along the edges of the panic, reforming in the corners of my mind. Suddenly, it stepped into a wash of flickering light, revealing not a monstrous entity, but a familiar face twisted in a horrific grimace. My heart pounded violently as I recognized him, not a stranger from the shadows, but someone who used to sit next to me in class. Liam, I gasped, the name slipping from my lips like a confession. His eyes, once filled with curiosity and mischief, now brimmed only with madness and desperation. He screamed something unintelligible, words drowned in noise, and the darkness pulsed around him, as if it were alive. The terror in that sound penetrated all reason, igniting dormant fears more powerful than the chaos that ensnared us. Stay back! Caleb shouted, a flicker of rage igniting in his usually calm demeanor. But his brave words did little to ease the frantic energy thrumming through the air. As I watched Liam sway unsteadily, a crashing wave of realization swept over me. He wasn't alone, and whatever was happening to him was larger than any of us could comprehend. The shadows he carried were twofold at once, shrouding him in a darkness directed inward and outward, threatening to consume anyone nearby. Help him! Jenna's desperation pierced through my thoughts, urging me forward. But how could we help him when we were still grappling with our own fears? Liam, I called, my voice in an unexpected harmony with the chaos surrounding us. Fight it! This isn't you. Just as he turned, meeting my eyes for a fleeting moment, the building shook again, not a mere tremor this time, but a cataclysm that reverberated within our chests. The shadows seemed to roar, swallowing his terrified scream as he was engulfed by the dark. No! I shouted, reaching out in desperation, willing to stretch myself beyond the threshold of reason. I forged a path toward him, my instincts spiraling, and before I could think better of it, I was darting forward, leaving our makeshift safety behind. In that frantic millisecond of courage and terror merging into one, I felt the invisible thread binding me to my friend snap, and dread washed over me like torrents of rain. Don't go! I heard Jenna's voice, threaded with agony. But ahead of me, I could only see Liam tossing and turning within the shadows, his face morphing into an impression of anguish so profound it threatened to shred my own heart. And in that rebellious instant, fate's cruel hand struck harder than I could bear. I reached out, fingers grazing his, and felt an overwhelming pulse thrumming against my skin, wrapping me in a new kind of darkness. In an electric flash, the world tumbled away, replaced by a visceral terror deep within, where hope and despair battled in an unseen arena. I could feel the ground fall away beneath my feet, the very fabric of reality unraveling as screams echoed in the air, wrapping its arms tight around me. Just as I feared I would lose myself forever, a voice broke through, crystal clear amidst the cacophony of voice that felt like home, steady and fierce. "Jenna, grab her." And then darkness enveloped me entirely, hanging on the precipice of unfamiliar freedom or terrifying entrapment. The grip of darkness faded and reality pulled me back, though not without cost. I blinked against the dim emergency lights, which now felt like stars fighting against an all-consuming night. The echoes of screams were replaced by a lingering silence, dense and treacherous, as if the world were holding its breath, waiting for something to shatter the stillness. I found myself sprawled on the ground, tangled with the limbs of other terrified souls, a jarring weight crushing my chest. Panic flooded my veins as I grasped at the familiar textures of my friend's tangle of arms and legs, the sharp edges of shoes and bags, their breaths heavy around me, labored. "Liam," I gasped, my voice strained like it had been pulled through a narrow funnel. "Where's Liam?" "Shoo!" Jenna hissed, her voice trembling at the edges as she pulled me closer. "Stay down. Just stay down." Caleb quickly scrambled to his feet, eyeing the crawling shadows that lingered at the periphery, his breath coming in jagged gasps. "We can't stay here. We need to move. We can't let it find us," he urged, a flicker of the determined spark that first rallied us all in the chaos. "No!" I shouted, rising to my knees. The memory of Liam's gaze, the raw torment that had echoed in that fleeting moment, hit me like a tidal wave. "We can't leave him. We have toes gone." Kyle's voice cut through the thick air, each word heavy with unyielding sorrow. "Liam is gone, and we don't know what that thing is. We can't risk it," but the finality in his voice only fueled my resolve. I pushed past the pang of fear, feeling desperation clawing at my throat like a desperate plea. Somewhere in the depths of my heart, I sensed that Liam wasn't just the victim of chaos. He was a part of it. If we were to understand the shadows, we had to confront them, not abandon them. "Please," I begged, searching the faces of my friends, hoping to find at least a sliver of understanding there. "He's one of us. We can't just let him fade away." Caleb's expression softened for the briefest moment, but it quickly turned hardened by the reality pressing in upon us. "There's no way we can go back. You saw whatever that was. We have no idea how to fight it, but you can't fight what you don't understand." I shot back, urgency warring with the weight of my emotions. "We can't just leave. What if he's still in there?" The air shimmered, and a moment of quiet introspection graced the collective anguish in our tangled thoughts. And suddenly, as if by some unspoken agreement, Caleb reached for the emergency flashlight head tucked away in his backpack. "You think he could be somewhere else?" Jenna asked tentatively, her voice laced with a delicate hope that felt like glass, fragile and on the verge of breaking. "What if we can find a way to help him?" "Yes," I insisted, the idea blooming like a reluctant flower breaking through crackled asphalt. "If we can distract it. If we can somehow lure it back, we might bring him home." The shadows seemed to dance around us, flickering in sync with our words, hollow yet inviting dread into our hearts. I took a deep breath, glancing at each of my friends, their faces three-dimensional sketches of uncertainty and bravery. "No one gets left behind," I reiterated, though I wasn't entirely sure I believed it myself. Caleb took my arm, a direct connection that shivered with unspoken fear. "All right then. But we need a plan. We need some kind of sound maybe that can draw it away enough for you to go in after Liam." Every blade of anxiety sliced through my resolve, but the thought of Liam, trapped and alone, summoned a warmth I could barely describe. "Okay," I nodded, swallowing back the rising tide of dread. "Let's make this count." As we moved in unison toward the emergency stairs, a sudden wave of shrieks erupted from somewhere below us, clawing its way up the steps, reverberating through the concrete with an ethereal menace. My heart leapt to my throat as we instinctively pressed together closer, breaths intermingling in pointed panic. "What was that?" Kyle whispered, eyes wide, darting to the corners as if something tangible would come lunging. Through the shadows. I don't know. But it's too close, Jenna replied, trembling against my shoulder. We need to hurry. As we hurried down the steps, the persistent echoes of cries intertwined in a haunting symphony. With every step, I braced for the shadows to swell and rise around us, to swallow us whole. But in my depths, fear wrestled with determination. I refused to succumb. Then, quite abruptly, the howls ceased. An eerie silence settled, sweeping through the stairwell like a rolling fog. What just happened? Caleb breathed, staring at the flickering lights above us, which now seemed strangely subdued, as if the darkness had swallowed their vibrancy. I turned, the rush of adrenaline still pumping in my veins. We have to keep moving, I urged, feeling a new tide of resolve shift inside me. But as we exchanged glances, a chilling realization flooded back. What if the silence was just a ruse? What if something infinitely worse was lurking in the stillness? But before the words could escape me, the air suddenly trembled, shaking with an indescribable force. From the hazy shadows that brushed against the walls, a figure emerged, stepping forth into the red glow of the emergency lights. My heart stopped, blood turning to ice. It was not Liam. The face that peered into view was unnervingly familiar, one that I had held in the echoing recesses of my memory. As the lights flickered, the figure, cloaked in a ragged shadow, articulated a single word that wrapped around my chest like a vice grip. Help me. I staggered back, my blood running cold as recognition slammed into me like a freight train. It was someone I thought I'd lost ages ago, a haunting face I had tried to forget, a remnant of a past fraught with pain. Anna? I whispered, disbelief threading through my voice. And in that terrible moment, the shadows seemed to pulse with life, echoing our fears, binding us to a reality I never intended to face. Every ounce of my being screamed for me to run, to escape the figure woven into my past, but the weight of her presence tethered me to the spot. Anna? I murmured again, my voice trembling, as if saying it would invoke a long-buried sorrow, resurrecting shadows I thought I'd banished. The weightiness of her gaze penetrated the fog of fear wafting through the hallway. Her dark eyes were both desperate and familiar, mirroring the sadness that dwelled deep within my own heart. Help me, she whispered, her voice a fragile echo steeped in sorrow. The grounded essence of who she once was, the girl I had known so intimately, seemed to hover just beyond reach, as if wrapped in smoke. A flash of memories invaded my mind. Laughter in classrooms, shared secrets, and a friendship that withstood the trivial storms of high school life. But the darkness surrounding her now was palpable, a thick shroud of despair that threatened to choke out every ounce of light. No, it isn't real, I told myself, desperately seeking clarity amidst the madness swirling around us. She couldn't be here, not after everything that happened. Get away from her, Kyle shouted, stepping protectively in front of me, his posture strong against the threat that fate had thrown our way. But Anna wasn't here to hurt us. She was reaching out, pleading for connection in a world that had cast her aside, much like Jenna. The intertwining pain seared through the air, binding us in the raw tangle of our shared struggles. No, I cried, stepping forward as if compelled by an invisible force. It's not what you think. I could feel the weight of the decision being made in that moment. I had lost Anna once before, and couldn't bear the thought of losing her again. I'm not going to let you disappear like before. Each word felt like a lifeline, a tether anchoring me to purpose. Yet as I approached her, the low growl of uncertainty rumbled through the dimly lit hallway. Stay back. We don't know what she's capable of. Caleb's voice dripped with worry, his hands clenched into fists. But my heart thudded in response, resonating with Anna's desperate plea, as if we were two voices yearning to break free of the bonds that intertwined our lives. Anna, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. You're not alone anymore. We can find a way to help you. Just let me in. Please. Each word bled into the air, fragile as glass, but within them lay the burning strength of my resolve. Help me, she repeated, closer now, her breath ragged, laced with the pain of my own memories. Please, I need you to remember. The shadows thickened, swirling ominously around us, threatening to take us all under. But in the stormy air, I saw the flickering light of shared understanding. The connection of our scars, our past intertwined like fragile vines. A soft gasp broke the silence behind me, and I turned to see Jenna, an expression of fierce determination etching across her features. Mia, she's hurting. We can't leave her, she urged, stepping forward, embodying the courage I had been striving for. Don't you see? She needs us. We can't abandon her to the darkness. As she edged closer, something shifted in the air. Adrenaline surged through me, fighting against the instinctual tug of fear. Together, I encouraged, holding my breath as I turned my eyes back to Anna, who was swaying in the shadows, paint-streaked tears shimmering in the dim light. We're here for you, I affirmed, feeling my heart race beneath the weight of the moment. Please, let us help. For a fleeting second, the darkness shimmered, and Anna's haunted expression flickered, as though the shadows momentarily released their grip, revealing a glimpse of the girl I had once known. You don't understand, she said, the quaver in her voice resonating with the echoes of restraint. The shadows, they never left me. Her admission hit like a tidal wave, crashing against the dam I had built around my own heart. They don't have to consume you. We can fight this together, I insisted, the words pouring forth like a prayer against the impending chaos. All of us. I gestured to my friends, who nodded hesitantly, their eyes wide with mixed emotions. And then, something shifted in the atmosphere. A haze of broken trust began to form, but amidst the swirling doubts lay the fragile light of a new path. Come on, Anna. Jenna stepped closer, mirroring my outstretched hand, her voice gaining strength from our resolve. We're not leaving you behind. You're one of us. In that breathless exchange, the shadows pulsed and coiled, a wicked entity reevaluating its territory. Anna teetered, caught between acceptance and resistance, frozen in the tension of wanting to be saved but afraid of the cost. Please, Anna, I pleaded, my heart echoing an unspoken promise that rang louder than my fears. Trust us. Then, like a dam breaking, her anguish spilled forth, saturating the air with vulnerability. I'm so tired, Anna whispered, each syllable unraveling the darkness that enveloped her. So tired of feeling lost. And in that instant, she reached out, a small gesture that blazed with defiance against everything that sought to consume her. The moment she took my hand, light burst forth, illuminating the shadows that had kept us confined. It was as though we were merging, entwining our sorrows and fears into something beautiful. A kaleidoscope of strength surged through use, an unbreakable bond formed there, alive with hope. And just like that, the shadows writhed angrily, as if furious that their hold was slipping. A sudden roar of darkness rushed toward us, intangible yet relenting, but our unity became a shield, a living testament against the chaos threatening to tear us apart. Hold on, I shouted, squeezing Anna's hand harder. In that fleeting moment, the cacophony of shadows around us began to explode, dissipating like wisps of smoke caught in the wind. And as they disbanded, I saw a glimpse of who Anna truly was beneath that darkness, a steadfast spirit that had fought for far too long. For each trembling fear that had intermingled in the shadows, there were flickers of light and love, embodying collective power, and we were not merely shadows. We were interconnected souls reaching for the same truth. As the final remnants of darkness faded, I turned back to my friends, their eyes wide, reflecting both shock and awe at what had just transpired. We did it! Jenna breathed, warmth encompassing her features as we all embraced in disbelief. There were no words to capture the sheer magnitude of what we'd achieved, yet I could feel the inverter of understanding breaking through, unifying us in a profound sense of purpose. But even amidst the triumph, as raw emotion coursed through me, a haunting thought nagged at the corners of my mind. What if this moment would be fleeting? The knowledge weighed on my heart like a stone. And as if echoing my thoughts, the alarms began ringing again, signaling that our time was not over yet. But as I glanced at Anna, girl I thought had been lost forever, I saw resilience etched into her features, the light sparking amidst uncertainty. We were forged anew in these trials, reconnected by the threads of solidarity. It was in the struggle for understanding that we had found each other again, the spirit of humanity awakened from the shadows, and sometimes, in the heart of darkness, all we need is a flicker of hope, a reminder that no matter how deeply we're buried beneath uncertainty, love has the power to fight the darkness. As we emerged from the depths of fear and uncertainty, a fierce resolution surged within me. No matter what lay ahead, we would stand together, tethered by every moment shared. For we were more than survivors, we're warriors, united not just in our struggle, but in our triumph. Together, I vowed, my voice resolute as the weight of our struggles melted away. And as the sun burst through the remnants of darkness, illuminating the shadows, I knew we would rise, fueled by the determination to forge our own destinies. In the depths of chaos, we had finally found our way home. Together, I whispered again, each heartbeat echoing the promise, a beautiful reminder of what it means to love fiercely, for even in the night, the dawn will always break through, lighting the path ahead.